fellas, ladies, what's going on there? Everybody hear me?
Yeah, what's up, Brett?
Got you, Bret.
Well, first off, Happy New Year. New year we're upon. Been a while, so obviously, I know you talk with Barry here in a minute. I just thought if I had a little bit of time here at the front end, talk about some events. Obviously, the game changer today, right, was a new schedule. Was told by the Big Ten, maybe even a couple months ago, just with what happened with the COVID, that they were looking at rescheduling things this year and playing it out. So I knew one of the big things that was going to change. We were set really to go to Penn State 3 years in a row after the COVID year. So I thought that was something that was going to change, and we weren't really told anything other than that changes were coming. So got that information. Obviously, doesn't change what we had as our opener, and really just essentially play all the same games. The only one that's different is playing at Indiana. So we'll adjust and adapt to that and make it play out. Like I've always said, right, we'll just tell me the rules and we'll play, right? And the schedule is the schedule. So I think it's interesting. It gives us a 3-week window, a bye week, a 4-week window, and a bye week in 5 games. I believe 5 of our first 7 are at home. So to have the advantage of that, I guess, is a good point. But obviously on the back end of the year, we're the only team in the conference to have 2 away games at the end of the year. So everything has its story, but I think that's the biggest one, right? The 2 bye weeks that we gained from playing in a week 0 game. I really like those bye weeks this year. I thought it was advantageous for us to have those for our growth, our development. Next year is year 2. We're going to be a little bit further along, but I think those bye weeks are critical things to take advantage of, and for us to have those 2, to at least have it evenly spaced and not have them on top of one another plays into our favor, I believe. So that's there. Obviously, on campus here today, I can't really talk specifics because there's still some NCAA rules involved, but we have our early enrollees starting here on campus today. They'll go through a process here today, tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, Sunday to get them ready for classes and everything to begin on Tuesday. So not only do classes begin, that'll be our start of our winter program. So Tank and his crew have got things lined up. We got an 8-week window. Basically, the first 8 weeks of school, we'll go through a winter conditioning plan that involves, basically 5 days of work for us with our kids during the course of the week. There's a limited number of hours. You can spend 8 hours a day with them until we get to spring ball. So we'll go basically from that first week, even though we can't start work with them until Tuesday. We'll work with them 8 straight weeks of off the field, some positional meetings, very limited time window that you can use. 8 hours sounds like a lot for a week, but it's really not when you're spreading it out over 5 days. So the first couple of weeks, they'll be doing a lot of work with Tank and his crew while we're on the road recruiting the last 2 weeks of January. Then we'll get heavily involved in week 3 individually with our players on the field as well as off. But these last 2 weeks in January, as coaches, we'll be on the road every day. We'll treat that really kind of almost like an early spring recruiting. We're pretty much done with our class of this year. There's going to be a few modifications, but for the most part, 22 is behind us. And then we'll focus on 23, 24s and jump into it. The only transition we had was with Coach Lunney, so he'll primarily take over Coach Peterson's recruiting world in the same area here in Illinois. Minnesota, we might share that with a couple different people, and then Coach Lunney has a pretty vast experience when I was with him in the South, obviously within Arkansas, but Oklahoma, Texas, anything in that region, and he'll be, of course, a natural recruiter of national quarterbacks as well as any offensive player. So we'll have our work shut out for us there. I like the way the schedule lays out. We'll go 8 weeks. I love doing an 8-week window of training altogether. Then we'll go into our week of spring break and then 5 straight weeks of spring football. After 5 straight weeks of spring football, we'll go through a couple weeks on campus with our guys. We'll hit the recruiting trails for our spring recruiting, give the kids a couple mandatory discretionary weeks off, and then we'll come back and work them June and July to come back in and probably report almost the exact same fall schedule in early August to get us ready for week 0. So really, that's kind of an update in the program. I think you guys got a pretty good grasp on the players that we signed. I can comment on those guys that are here on campus, but we will add some transfer players that we can't actually comment on them physically until they're enrolled in our classes on Tuesday. And then as well as some non-scholarship PWO guys that will be joining us as well, that I can't really comment on them until they're enrolled in student and involved in classes. So that's kind of prohibitive there. But with that, I guess I'll open it up for any questions, and then I'll talk about Coach Lunney before I turn it over to him.
But I didn't know if you're going to address just why did you want to make this change from Tony to Barry?
Okay, so if we just transition, nobody has anything about the program, and we'll jump into it. You know, I like I said when I came here, right? Wanted to bring in an offensive and defensive coordinator that I thought could make us into the Illinois offense, and you know, I like the progress that we made. We definitely played our best football at the end of the year, especially in the Northwest. But really just felt for us to take the next step offensively and as a program here, after being in the league for a number of years, being out of it during my time at Arkansas, then the 3 years in the NFL, I just felt for us to take the next step offensively was going to really just help not just our offense, but our program, right? And for me as a head coach to continue to grow. I think when I was in the SEC, you really saw the evolution of football, especially at some premier programs that went to some up-tempo, no huddle, still balanced in their numbers, but ran the ball in maybe different fashions. Coach Lunney and I were together at Arkansas. I hired him. He was actually an offensive coordinator at high school locally, but had been a guy that had played in the Arkansas system, had a great reputation in the coaching world. Brought him in and interviewed him and knew right away where I wanted to go. Once I was with Coach Lunney, I believe it was maybe year 2 or 3, maybe even we actually divided our special teams up at the time to, we didn't have the 10th coach. So we made our coaches, every coach kind of had a special team assignment. And the reason I did that was I thought it maximized our staff, but I also like to watch coaches who aren't coordinators at the time learn how they can run the room. And so I put Barry in charge of our punt team. And it was something he had never done. The system we ran wasn't even a system he had been around, but I taught it to him, or he learned it through our system. And then I watched him coordinate it. And I did that for 2 reasons. I thought he'd be great for the room, but also I wanted to watch and see and learn him as a potential coordinator. If I had stayed at Arkansas, I knew eventually I would have transition offensively. We've been able to have success there and put up good numbers. I thought we might transition. I was kind of doing a coordinator in waiting with Barry. Unfortunately, when that changed for me, it was a fortunate thing for Barry. He stayed there. And then obviously the last 2 years at UTSA, I've seen what he's been able to do as an offensive coordinator, right? He took that program to new levels of success. I saw it firsthand as a competitor and witnessed it overall. You know, as I decided to make transition, I began to look at different offensive coaches, different offensive styles, different programs, and I just kept gravitating back to Coach Lunney at UTSA. Conversations I began to have with him and even with their head coach talked about what Barry was able to do to install, to implement, to put in his own verbiage and language. And then after I transitioned from Tony, really just was impressed with Barry's knowledge, how he built this package, how he communicates his package, the terminology. One of the things that jumped out to me right away was when he used the term tempo. So it's a tempo offense with a pro style influence. That really kind of jumped out to me and something that fit really quickly into what we were already currently doing. So made this transition to give Barry a chance to come in here, install really a lot of the same things he had at UTSA as far as the way they're calling it, the verbiage, the huddle system, the techniques, but really put a style on it here at Illinois that factors into what our player strengths are. And ever since I've been around Barry, we've always talked about maximizing player strengths and minimizing player weaknesses. You know, whoever ends up being the quarterback here in the season ahead is going to be great driving force to what we do, right? And I think that's a conversation I've had with Barry that excites me. Is he's obviously got a system in place that is very balanced. Anytime you have production in a running game and a throwing game the way that they have, and the way it ranks nationally is very, very eye-opening. But also for me to have familiarity with him on just a certain core belief in how games are won, right? You may have a team that needs to have the ball rushed X number of times to win a game, or you may have a team that you got to throw the ball around X number of times to win the game. Whatever we got to do to win is what we're going to be able to do. As far as that was the driving force, right? Had a great conversation with Tony. Obviously, these situations aren't easy, but really expressed to him how much I appreciate what he did and how he did it. A great asset to us when he came here and the things that we were able to accomplish. But I just wanted us to go a little bit different direction. Also, a little bit of more a system that is in place that feels good, that's had success, and now he'll teach it to our other coaches. So Barry will be the only new face in the room. Much the same when I took over my first time as a coordinator, I was the only new face in the room. So I had to teach the entire group what our system was. And that's what I've asked Barry to do. So he'll come in and be the guiding light, what this system is, why it is, how it's communicated, but also how it can adjust to us here at the University of Illinois.
Thanks, Brett.
So with that, I'll open up for questions, anything along that lines, or if there's anything else, I'm free to hear.
Brett, not to get too nostalgic, but I know this is a relationship-based business, and I was curious how the difference in the initial conversation with Barry than almost a decade ago when you brought him into Fayetteville. Was a different kind of deal and than it was in 2013?
Yeah, I think you're right. Football is obviously driven heavy by schemes and terminology and X's and O's. But I really learned of Barry through his father, to be quite honest with you. A proven, longtime, very successful high school coach in Arkansas, and he was a very good agent for Barry. And I brought Barry in, and we had an interview, and was immediately just very impressed with who he is, what he was. While I was at Arkansas, Barry and I got very close. He has a wonderful family. He has a wife who's kind of this very special woman that at the time, when I first met him, I didn't have kids, right? Newly married, and Janelle, Barry's wife, and my wife had a great relationship. And then Barry had two boys at the time, were young men, Luke and Levi. And I had a kind of a moment where I knew I was having young kids, and I really and I even told Barry at one point, I don't know how many years ago, I learned a lot from him at Arkansas about Arkansas, but I also learned a lot about being a father. So it's different this time, but this move was made because I wanted to get a really good football coach in here, but because I knew him personally and what he's capable of teaching, that's why I made the move. I think he's an incredible teacher. He coached in high school football, right? So he literally had to walk the walk of being a teacher and instructor. That's very important to me. A lot of people can talk, very few people can teach. And I think he's an excellent teacher, which really gets me excited.
Thank you, Brett.
Yep.
Hey, Coach, happy birthday a day ahead of time. What's the cake of choice?
Bob, I know I don't look like it, but I'm not a big sweet tooth guy. So I don't think I'm in charge of the cake department. Actually, ironically, my wife's birthday is today. So I think she had the ultimate pull on what birthday cake we had combined. So I am excited. I've been in San Antonio the last couple of days with the coaches convention. Was able to get back. I didn't get home till about 1:30 last night. Flew into Indy late and drove over, and then was in early today. So I'm excited. I get to go home tonight and celebrate my wife's birthday, kind of my birthday, because tomorrow I'm on the road again. We're gonna make a little unofficial recruiting trip to try to recruit some guys back to our program that will take me out of town for my birthday. So whatever cake it is, it's going to be good, I'm sure.
Coach, I want to get back to spring ball. You mentioned you're going to have a new offense. Well, the fans have a chance to see you this spring. Is there a spring game? What's the plan that way?
Yeah, so actually we've tweaked with the idea. We were actually kind of holding on our calendar until we found out what the rules were going to be COVID-wide coming in to this semester. There's just been an uptick, in different things. So there was a point maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we weren't sure how we were going to have our guys this first first week when they get back next week, but it does look like we'll have everybody in the building, ability to work out wise. So I'm going to stay with the program. That last week, I have proposed to the powers of be possibly a Thursday night football game instead of a Monday night game. So that's where we're kind of leaning, but we haven't been able to solidify. It'll either be hopefully on that Thursday or that Saturday, the last week in April.
Thanks, Coach.
As far as you guys being invited, you'll be invited on a limited basis. Obviously, we'll have transition. So, you know, one of the advantages to that would be that we'll be able to stay remotely silent on some of the stuff we're doing offensively, and the modifications we'll take defensively, but you'll probably have a little more access than you had a year ago.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Coach, in your kind of longer drawn out statement about Barry Lunney, you mentioned how the SEC has kind of changed what they did. Obviously, that kind of happened when you were at Arkansas, what Nick Saban did offensively. What is it about that kind of, to use the term that Barry uses, tempro style and tempo that you think can translate well to the Big Ten?
Well, two things. For us here at Illinois, I think you have to recruit to what you're going to be able to, you know, recruit effectively year in and year out. And I do think we're going to be able to get our hands on tight ends and running back, my history and what we are. But I think the blending of one of the things that really jumped out to me with Barry's team, especially this year, to have 3 receivers with over 50 catches, the numbers they put up, and ability to throw the football. So I think a couple teams that we're going to play on our schedule, we probably be able to we need to get the ball in the perimeter and get the ball out quickly in the passing game. And that's what this offense can do effectively. I've seen it happen. Some run pass options, as well as a different way to use the quarterback and the tempo that's really in his hands, right? Not only his hands as a quarterback, but also Barry as a play caller. As I watched UTSA's offense, I watched it in chronological order, and because I knew we played them early, so I, you know, obviously had seen the game that we played out, and then I watched, and each week there was never just this consistent, this is what they're doing. It was consistent what they were doing, but one week it might be a run game, next week might be a throw game, might be a run game that featured this type of run, the next week a different. They use different personnel. I still think 11 and 12 from the conversations Barry and I have had are going to be the forefront of our personnel groupings, but depending on the strength of our roster and the players that we're able to add in or discover, that'll drive us in the future. Again, I just keep going back to the ability to be balanced, the ability to use a tempo, and really the ability to play to our players' strengths and minimize their weaknesses will drive us.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.
Hi, Bret. I know Barry's had some experience kind of recruiting some bigger time players at Arkansas. What does he kind of add to you guys as a recruiter?
Well, he'll have a decisive area that he'll recruit, but as coordinators, really him and Ryan have a smaller area than most of my coaches. So he'll be at task for that specific area, especially his region here in Illinois. But one of the things I love about Barry is that I've called this and said this a lot of times. Some of your premier recruiters are very ambidextrous, right? They can really blend into and recruit anywhere in this country. And I think Barry is one of the unique guys that can say that. I myself, I always remembered early on in my career, I would go in these areas that I never did before, but you could have success based on your personality, your demeanor, your professionalism. And I think Barry fits that category very, very well. So he'll go on the road with me starting as early as Friday. And I'll take him into really any offensive player that we want to talk about coming here to the University of Illinois, because he can really bring that value, and nobody can talk about this system better than him.
Thanks.
Okay, we're gonna move on to make a sub here, but I think you guys will be thoroughly enjoyed, and I couldn't be more excited about the transition to Coach Lunney here and bringing him in his first official day here in the building. So exciting day. I'll turn it over to Barry. Hold on.